away. People that were selling whatever they're selling in that area are now just selling that street. So that issue is,
What street is that?
I believe, it's village. Just wrong. So while they're not doing what they were doing on Main Street, they just moved.
Okay.
And I'm just passing along what other business.
Thank you. Anything else? So just one of the other pieces that we're trying to do on the public safety side is we're looking at, and I think both Sergeant and Andy did a Zoom call with folks from Pittsfield, Mass. And they have something that's called the ambassadors, downtown ambassadors, where they hire both youth and to be sort of teamed up to walk around, and they're able to contact the police if they see something, but they're kind of wandering around. Or you need this, let me help you with the parking, let me do this, you know, let me tell you where the restaurants are, how you can find this out, where the center, the welcome center is, so that it's more of having someone walking around. During our busy time, it wouldn't be 24/7. It would be in the evenings, probably on weekends. So we're looking into that, and we have requested some member funding from one of our states and wants to help us with that to get it started. So that's another piece that we're trying to add to the public safety, which would be more of obviously it would be police presence, but it would be presence with people who are assured, official, would be part of our downtown.
And I'm assuming they would be adequate training.
Yeah, it was a training program that they would go through. Yeah. It's been very successful where it's used. So there would be training, there would be interaction with the police would do some of the training. We would do training, or whoever takes it over.
We're not set up to train civilians in any capacity for it.
I'm sorry.
They learn CPR and they learn how to pick up cell phone, make a phone call.
Okay. I'm training, I mean, I'm not training in what they would do when something happened, but training in what to do if something, who would fall, what to do. Not that you would train them to be police officers. Sorry.
Are they lead positions?
Yes. They can be paid or not.
So what about auxiliary, like that we was discussing last week? I mean, no, different, but, can we share with Clarkstown, or can we get our own, because that's volunteer, right? So, and they're says you're training for so many things, and you know, it's like an extra presence on the streets.
You want to speak to that, or do you want me to?
So Orangetown Auxiliary are not trained in the capacity to patrol, they direct traffic for special events. And you have communications, which are call for assistance, which is what we're begging everyone in the community to do. When you see something, say something. We come to the meeting, we're hearing a lot of things that are going on. Last week, over the weekend, 2 weeks ago, we could address some of these things, even if it's just documenting, mediating what it occurs. So the auxiliary would not patrol the village. They don't patrol in any capacity anywhere in any part of the town of Orangetown. They are fantastic volunteer resource, like you mentioned. We have a special event. We've had many numerous events in the village of Nyack where they've assisted with direct traffic that you hear for. We've got a Memorial Day parade. We've got Fire Memorial Parade.
Fireman.
Right,
Parade.
yeah, Memorial Day parade and the promenade. They'll be here. You'll see them, but they're not here to patrol the premises.
There was a thing about sharing. Clarkstown.
It's completely different jurisdiction. We work with the Washington.
So it's not.
They don't, that's not what their auxiliary is. So
Are we saying that Clarkstown Auxiliary Patrol?
That's what they say.
yeah, that's what. With their uniform. It's still events though, it's still events.
Say you do with events, right? No, now, maybe we can put it up with kind of the light check, the lights out. Just people in the sort of party around. We're not trying to engage into that way. You get in trouble with trying to deal with it. But we don't, the first thing to really.
Since that's something that to expands their auxiliary capabilities, or if it's something that is within their capabilities, have, auxiliary control in the parking lots. So I have spoken about this.
I sort of clarify, I think when people are talking about auxiliary doing patrol, it's really sort of, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's some eyes and ears, just having a visible presence at the times when, doing the foot patrol type stuff that the police need to be more available to answer calls, but they could have radios or these cell phones where they could contact the police if they did see something that was going on and needed police attention. But just even their presence might work as a deterrent. I think that's what people are talking about. They're not talking about them doing any policing actions other than flying the flag, really.
I hear what everyone's saying. We realize these volunteers, we have numerous events throughout the roughly 28 square miles, 30 square miles of town of Orangetown. Everyone's got these events. They also, auxiliary officers volunteer at the times they're hard. For the events they do make, we do have a hard time staffing all of the events throughout the town. We actually have to turn down numerous events. I think when I hear what you're saying, presence and uniform, patrols, professionalism, they're all those things, but the one that's not their capacity to do this 9 hours in a day for people to work their full-time jobs and volunteer, do more volunteering. If anybody's interested in joining the Orangetown Police Auxiliary, let me know, get your contact with Sergeant Jim Wetland, and we're always looking for volunteers.
We can certainly put out a request to anything else, Jack?
I just want to say is that my brother lives in the city and his neighborhood, they've always had they've had some issues. This is come to me a number of years ago, and what they established was a neighborhood watch, and it worked out pretty good. Where various people would at night or even during the day just take a look and just radio the police if they saw something. Their thing never engaged, but just if they saw something, just like bomb it. You just
We've had actually a couple neighborhood watches in Nyack. And really this this ambassadors would be a neighborhood watch.
Exactly. I remember I think it was on Bridge, there was one for a period of time.
There may be one on Bridge. There's also one up on Washington.
Okay.
Around in that area. I think there's still signs of it.
Okay.
Anything else? Yes. But I'll be happy for someone else to put it in afterwards. Joey, you want to give just a quick update on the 9 cares ideas?
Yeah, sure. I suppose we've been working on something, working on it within the village board. And which I talked about at the last meeting, this idea of creating a fund where people, in order to discourage panhandling, and give people a very easy and ready way to make a donation of any amount to a fund that would be dedicated entirely to providing social services to the people who are needy within Nyack and allocated for that. So in other words, if you were on the street and someone asked you for money, you feel like you want to give something, but rather than give on the street, which usually the money will not be well spent, and it will just incentivize more panhandling, which tends to bring other issues up. In addition to that, you would give money to the what we found tap on, icon and just give money, tap, 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 and give $5, to the fund. What we need to get this off the ground, the memo that's posted, is posted on Facebook in a bunch of places. We'll make sure we get it out to everybody. I think it's at the link, NIAC.link/NIAC Cares. You can find it there. But there's also a volunteer form where if you want to volunteer to do some of the things that we need to do, we need a web designer to design a web. We need someone who knows about online payments. We need people who can do, help us with the marketing and the content, management and communications and PR and whatnot. It's going to be a community effort, and it's going to be a mostly volunteer effort. At some point, there will be a board of directors that will manage the fund, a board of stakeholders within NIAC. It won't be run out of the village. It'll be set up sort of by the village, but then handed off to private management. And then the village would be involved because the village is going to also be involved in facilitating the social service agencies as well as the nonprofits that provide services to people here in NIAC. So that coordination would be the role of the village in terms of information and money coming from the fund, and then the village coordinating where the money is needed and where the services were appropriate. Does anybody have any questions about it? Yeah.
That's an admirable endeavor, but it doesn't really, it's not practical for when you're on the street. And you're approached by a hand and you really show them the phone, I'm gonna donate. That doesn't sound like a no. I mean, it's good to amplify community efforts and to helping people who are less fortunate than us. Absolutely, I agree 100%. But in terms of the practicality of, we're approached by a parent, some of them are aggressive, they come, just telling them, look, I'm donating this, that cares, not going to solve their problem. I understand.
Let me just clarify the point that the reason to do it is less for the direct impact on the family and more on the psyche of the person who's giving the family. To say to the person giving the family, okay, I'm not a bad person because I'm not giving this person money. I'm giving money to a better cause that will help this person more than me giving him $5 and me buying him a burger or me doing anything like that. Plus, by giving the money this way rather than that way, I'm not encouraging people to come up to me and to everybody else in NIAC and ask them for money. And slowly, if the word gets out that the people of NIAC are not giving to the panhandlers will not have incentive to come here anymore. And just be clear, there's nothing in this that's trying to reduce the support for the people who are doing panhandling. It's about increasing the support for them in a way that will actually help them. So a lot of it's just a mentality. And also what it allows us to do by having NIAC Cares Fund is that we can have a please don't give to panhandlers on the street marketing campaign that is not perceived as harvest. That was a point that Tristan made in one of the meetings a couple of weeks ago, was to say that they're not going to put a sign up, don't give to panhandlers. People come in and say, no, you're a terrible person, and you're not, instead they say, don't give on the street, give to NIAC Cares, hashtag, take a picture, go, tap, 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 people on. So that's the idea. But you're right. It's also, remember, it's one of three parts of the strategy. It's let's try to reduce panhandling. Let's also facilitate more coordination between the village and social services, from the agencies as well as nonprofits. And then three, what we're doing here with the OPD to try to, as our efforts, try to engage with them better, that we can do things like, as the sergeant keeps pointing out, call the phone number. There's a phone number to call the phone number. The only way that we can document that these issues are here is if people call them. If they just happen and no one says anything, they don't know about them and they don't go into the record and they don't get tracked and we don't get the data on them. And Taylor was going to ask a question about the data, that we need to document that there's issues. And sometimes people they throw up their hands and they say, nothing's going to happen, there's no point, it's already over, or it's not. But the person who just accosted you is probably now going to accost somebody else. So you can get the description and say there's somebody out here who followed me to the ATM or blocked me from getting out of my car or tried to carry my groceries for me or whatever they're doing.
Okay, that makes everything makes sense.
Yeah.
Just the way you sell it.
has to award the coach ball ahead of time.
That's your mentality.
I know, it's
It's the idea that you do something rather than give money, you say, okay, I'm gonna
and you
do
don't have
this.
to be walking on the street to do it, you could just, you could raise money.
Well, we're hopefully gonna raise money in lots of different ways, but just the whole point is there is a dynamic in which people feel pressure to give money. Not necessarily because the person is threatening them, but just because they're big-hearted people that they see somebody in need and they wanna help. And this is to redirect that impulse to a positive way. It's really about the mentality of the people who are giving, not the people who get it.
Any of the other communities that are doing this program?
Yeah.
Actually, the people are like, if you saw me give money to a panhandler, you would come over to me and say, you know what, there's a way for you to give to 9 cares to help that person. You don't have to give them money. So it starts creating a culture of,
I don't disagree with that, I think it's never having to work to be said.
no, I'm just trying to explain the whole piece thing.
But there's a culture that you're trying to create.
Mindset.
Yeah, mindset,
And mindset.
and a sort of a community-based effort to try to do this, where everybody's kind of doing it in a kind of a good faith effort, and as opposed to coming out heartless. Yeah, Carl.
These funds are going to like, so let's say the outreach groups and then. Then, we do their job, that we don't have, then put the pressure on their staff, the business, owners, that be the ones that.
Right.
Yeah, like I'm just trying, it's like, you don't want to like, don't people want pigeons kind of sign, it's really strange, so to have kind of sign is often, but to have fun that people can donate to, where it's going to generate a good cause. I think that's incredible, and then when split it amongst the groups, I think a big part of that is to make sure that we put the pressure on the care groups. So that they then can't receive the money without putting the boots on the ground, can't get the money and then not be here when we need you. So we need to make sure that they get the money and then that fund that allocated properly towards NIAC and not misdirected outside of where it is. And that was one of the concerns that I had in the first meeting was.
Yeah.
It's like, they were like, well, the businesses should do this, and then you guys are funded to do this. It's
Exactly.
not our job to do, our job is to bring in commerce to the town. It's their job to do the outreach, kind of boots on the ground to combat it. And one of the things that kind of stuck out to me was that the bird team, they had one bird team. For the whole county. I mean, there's something that happened like on Main Street and they say they're in Suffolk. Long travel time, we got to deal with it. Maybe a little emergency response. But they said, the representative that was here, that they said that they only have one response team at the moment in the county. So that's why I just want to make sure that we're not paying for Suffern's issue, we're paying for NIAC's.
What we can say at this point is the intent is to raise money that would be redirected into the village. How that can be done and how we can make sure that the branch is restricted in that way. That's something that'll be decided down the road by the board of directors for this fund once it's created. But not something we can just, because I don't know what some of these nonprofits, it's not that easy for them to say, okay, we can segregate this money and only use it for this program. But it might be used for a program that gives disproportionate benefits tonight, and that might be acceptable to the board at that point. There's another question there? There and then here.
So it's not the village who's managing this fund.
No,
No, it would be a board.
yes,
So then the creation of Nine Cares is not as a village function, it's through.
it's gonna be, I mean,
Community
we're gonna
members.
help it get set up. I mean, I've already created some of it as a private citizen, not as an official duty. But
Right,
I won't do it. I mean, once we have a thing, we'll get it. We'll pass it
This
off.
can be done.
We can't do
with the
fundraising.
Community Foundation or with the United Way.
that's fine. I just want to make sure that it's clear that the village is not
You can't.
creating this.
We're not deciding where the money goes. We're not,
Okay.
yes, we're not, it's gonna be done independently of us. We can't raise money. And also, it's really, we want it to be a community effort. We don't want it to be village directed, so.
Right,
That's the whole point. It's to create it. But there is like, how do you initiate it? Well, someone's got to like, actually, go to the Rockland Community Foundation or go to the United Way and start the fund,
and,
which we might do, but then once we get it established, it's about getting the people on board.
right, and I guess then my question turns on, if it's not a function of the village, is this the proper forum for us to even have this discussion about Nine Cares? Because if we're not involved in it, it's just a community function, maybe it's not something we should be discussing here. I understand it's an option that we've come up with, but it sounds like we're teetering on the edge of what is government versus what is not government, and I just don't know if this is.
Well, we could certainly ask our attorney if it is or not, but to me, it's we're coordinating activities to meet a need that people have brought to us. I don't see it as being outside of our government's responsibility to respond to the needs of the country. We're not setting up something to fund and do something outside of government's responsibility.
Right, but that's kind of my point, is that I understand that we're responding to a need, but it sounds like what we're responding to the need is by engaging our government partners versus creating essentially what will be a nonprofit foundation that just benefits the village, which becomes then a separate entity.
That's what we're doing, right?
It's like we formed a park conservancy to do things to the park.
Same idea.
So it's the same similar idea.
Okay,
I
Start,
don't
spin it
think-
off. let it-
Once this gets started, Pascal, I think you're absolutely right to have the discussion at a really board meeting would be appropriate.
Yeah.
But for us to meet together to talk about getting this launched, I don't think is appropriate. But we can check if you're concerned about it, we can check with our attorney, and if we're not.
To make sure we're following the right. procedure.
yeah,
We'll back off, but I don't think we are.
I in the back, yeah.
So just like a couple of questions. One is there a way we can get to the root of why we have this problem? Having fun is one thing, and saying we're going to help people and saying I care. But there's got to be a reason why NIAC is a place where people are paying. And one issue is that we no longer have a shelter for unhoused people that's open at this point. It was open only in the home place of the year. And as every municipality in the county would say, we need it open all the time, then the shelter would be there, because I know people would take the bus to the shelter. So I don't know if it's gotten worse. And I have since the shelter closed in the beginning of April. I know it was still cold. So, why are there so many people besides the fact that it's not good here? So, really getting to the root of that.
I wanted to respond.
You want to respond to that? I was gonna. Go ahead.
So just, I guess, made up in the first meeting when the head of DSS, social stood up and basically said, we offer shelter, we offer food and medical. The offers are declined. The reason why there's panhandling happening here is because the word is out that the NIAC pedestrians and customers and residents are generous. And that is what is creating the panhandling as a common and frequently seen behavior.
Yeah,
They're saying they're not the lack of housing or the lack of basic services.
I was at that meeting, and I can tell you as someone who works at, not even participating in not even, I was not in any way aware that when somebody asked me for help finding shelter, and it did happen, that there was any number I could tell until that meeting.
That's a
So
good
it's-
thing why we're doing this meeting.
But
We're getting that
everybody is
information.
not the same, everybody is not refusing help. There are at least 4 or 5 people, more even, that were waiting and taking those buses. Everybody is not in a box. So we have to know the individual, and people at both of the meetings, people were talking about individual community members that they recognize that we can't handle their house or just asking for help. And then there's other people that are newer. So we just need to understand that everyone is not the same individual. All of the people that are struggling, are vulnerable are individuals. And that actually, we have to really think about that, but I think that we need to try to get the shelter back, because
So
nobody knows.
one of the things I think Pascal's saying that we shouldn't be trying to solve all these problems. We have a role as a village. We can ask for and have asked for a year-round shelter. We can act to it again and try to get other people to do it. Tristan and I still both doing probably for just 1 second. But this will be when we do, we're gonna in probably a couple of weeks, we're still trying to pull the date together. When we have the agencies come to talk about what services they can provide, That's when we need to ask those questions, so that we can make sure that we've got, that we have the fully pulpit, we've got all the things that we need to get the services that are there for the residents. Folks. Interesting, Paul, that's saying a first interesting, Paul.
Just talking back to. So I was at the last meeting, one of the things to discuss as part of the program. It is definitely teaching culture. Giving it also special word that we discussed earlier, but also part of the campaign for that is we do have the part to actually have access to all of the numbers that we need in the event of that issue. So the two-sided issue that we spoke about last time, it came to a marketing by, instead of like having to do that panhandle sign, with an eye care, and I again, two-sided things. So the care side could potentially have the QR code on it and have all the information to all of the outreach groups and you can just immediately reach out to. Yeah, and then I think that would help. Once you have that information around you, once you learn that, okay, I can listening to all the information there and see something that's needed. I think, like, I don't know the numbers, but I knew the biggest point that I can go to, I easily just like to be able to work what I do and think that was a great idea that we had last time.
And that's Joey soliciting volunteers to help with that marketing and PR ideas for my affairs.
I might be able to help you design that.
You're right.
I was just gonna suggest, is there any way that, the river shelter, having a representative of PSS, essentially that, doesn't matter if the shooting is, maybe it's like that.
Certainly something, that's a great idea, something that could be discussed and we bring everybody together. And John Sylvester is very anxious to get anything else?
Is there anything in regards to, whether it's areas, whether it's shelter or something where private citizens can reach out to an assembly member, state senator, member, if that like would be a good idea to have for whether it's funding.
So what purpose?
On the shelter, that's the first thing that's been in my mind, but if like we can get some grant or like something handed out in the states and get that extra resource.
I mean, I can kind of answer that. Well, in terms of state resources, yes, you can go to your assembly people. The only thing that would happen in that sense, specifically for a shelter, is obviously it would be a county ask. The county has to ask. And yeah, they would have to decide and ask for that. And it doesn't necessarily require legislation, it's just a funding issue. But that's the only, but that it's on the county. You have to lobby the county to get a shelter.
Just think that do that business travel. So a lot of the restaurants now are not restaurants, hotels, hotels, they'll have like room service thing or the hotel lobby, they actually have like a phone representative option. So that could be like one of the things, like I know like not every hotel does it, but some of the more niche hotels that are trying to be more like forward thinking when it comes to social issues, like environmental issues. Like when you pick up the phone, there's literally an office that it's linked exactly to like where that number is. So in terms of what comes to care and gifts, you could have like phone representative and it could be like a link or a number they can press and so they can have to go to the person that they need to go to instead of being like, what call or where's it go? Right? How another negative link. Call right here.
Yeah, so, well, I think we've got to coordinate those things with the agencies, because I'm not sure all the agencies have that kind of capacity to do it. But it's an interesting, very creative, interesting idea. We just have to make sure that the agencies can actually respond to it. I'm not sure, like when I was at Meals on Wheels, we just didn't have it then. We might have it now. So I think lobbying comes from people being concerned about stuff and bringing their issues to the government, just like you did to us, and we're trying to respond to it, so. It's just knowing which level of government is allotted. There are state funds for shelters. Which is our county has decided to only do the warming shelter. And I believe the reason why the warming shelter was formed was because the 5 town supervisors sort of put their foot down and said, we gotta have something for the revenue. Yeah. And then the state actually required our county to have it. It wasn't something that the county should say. So that the state.
So, specifically, I wanted to, thank, Surgeon Type of Paolo being here. I have a question about data, but, I just wanted to mention something directly. I just wanted to, address and communicate my apology, probably aware of the whole, my shirt that I was wearing. I just wanted to say that it wasn't appropriate, and I never intended to imply or insinuate anything with the year. Are you not familiar with it? Okay, well, so long story short, I wore a shirt that was that had a confused commentary thing that was just inappropriate. It is, but still, I wanted to take the opportunity to make it known to you personally and to on public record, basically, to own up, be genuine about it, personally and publicly. So I also wanted to make sure I did it right. If there's any questions, you guys want to talk, and you're not aware of it. I just wanted to be forthcoming and I'm not to as genuine as I possibly can. But with that said, I have a question about data, being the data guy. So I had mentioned that I'm a big data scientist. I'm also a huge analysis for my job, and also for fun because what else? When you're 30 years old and you don't have anything else to do, no hobbies. So I'm really interested.
Sounds like a hobby to me.
Yeah. I don't, it's I paid a lot of money, but anyways, so I'm really interested in understanding from an analytical perspective, kind of, you mentioned that you had looked at the data recently. Is there a program in the OPD to do kind of analysis for more data-driven action? Like if there's somebody who's like, I mentioned Comstat, I think in the first meeting as kind of a good reference, but is there something like inside the OPD that you might say, hey, let me see the change in calls from this jurisdiction, from this municipality, from these areas, or actions or anything that have been taken in certain locations? Is that available to you guys?
So we have a computer-aided dispatch system, and I'm able to do queries within that. And I can pull information out, just comparing apples to oranges, this is this month, this is last month, or is this type of call volume in the past X amount of time?
Yeah. Okay. So have you seen like a specific change in the past few months to a year? Has there been anything like visible on that end? I'm just curious in terms of like trends, basically what's happening, specifically where and how, if that's occurring.
So I haven't done a statistical analysis of anything, but if you had a question,
Okay.
like, anything could be foiled. If, let's say we had a question part 2 becomes the meeting, I might consider that information together. I think the biggest hurdle we have is things are going underreported because people aren't calling.
Gotcha.
And I was, even just along the lines of communication and calling. I don't necessarily right now know all the phone numbers to call the help, but I do know if I call 359-3700, I'm gonna get a dispatcher who's got the Rolodex and the computer dispatch. If we don't have the answer, we'll make the phone call and figure it out. To answer your question, we can search information, and it's out there.
Okay, cool. Great. The last thing you mentioned, I think it's the 411. The first meeting.
Fit 411 at the Rockland District Attorney's Office has the anonymous way to report things. So for example, let's say there was something going on in a location and we didn't want to notify, or we found a call, or even call the police department risk that they might know who you are, but say you want to be anonymous. It's completely anonymized. And it was disconcerting to create an account for tip 411.
Yeah.
But we don't get that information. The district attorney's office is getting information. You just have an account through the software, which then shares the information with the appropriate relevant agency. And then, when we get it, says, this is what's going on in this area, and then we're aware.
Gotcha, okay. You can just sign up on, do your check in the DA's office to get an account, or is it?
Two, four, one, you can get it through the, Apple App Store, I believe, or the Android App Store.
Yeah,
And
like it just tells you to log in.
I think there should be,
Is there a create account thing like this? Okay, I'll check it out.
I would not call it DA's office, I think the whole purpose of being anonymous, right?
I did feel like it really, because I figured when it's on, it's good.
Right.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Of course.
Anything else? Okay, so we'll be in touch. We'll put together the meeting for the social service agency to be our next step. My peers will go on. We'll be working with the OPD and the public safety issues as we go forward. We'll report out at our next meeting if there's any issues that. And I'm always willing to hear things when you. Tonight, tomorrow, you know, the email, just send it in you or anyone on the board. And we'll share this. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Yeah, that's great. Yes. Yeah, it's like sometimes.
Well,
It's a alarm. Yeah.
I thought I could sit.
Don't worry.
Sometimes I don't.
I always try to figure out how to do this. I figure as much as I can play, I should have it. Actually.
If you have a bit about a problem, you got that idea. So we can play it. It's a bit about a problem.
Yeah, I'm not gonna spend the whole week. I keep my brain. So he didn't get that, but then I'm gonna do that, and I'm like, I don't know, it's. But then there's another vision that-
Yeah. Whatever thing you do.
Keep that,
Does he know that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I appreciate everything.